Hi there, it's Miss Jones again from Sew with Miss Jones. We are now getting ready to learn how to thread a needle, tie a knot, and do our basic stitches. So in an earlier video, I had this scrap of fabric out and I was going to use this to do my practice on. I did try doing it with that, but this is stretchy and it was a lot harder to use. So I would recommend, if you have something that is not stretchy, kind of like this stuff here, this is just a woven cotton. If you have something like this at home that's a scrap or in the rag bag, just make sure it's clean, press it out so it's nice and flat, and then you can go from there. Now, let's take a look at our guide sheet. Right here it says we have a start knot, and I'm going to highlight that just to remind me that if I need to come back and find that information, it is right there, okay? It says, hold the end of the thread close to the eye of the needle with your thumb and finger. And we're talking about your pointer finger and your thumb. You're going to wrap the thread around the middle of the needle 3 times. I might actually do it a little bit more than 3 times. And then while holding the wrapped thread against the needle, you're going to slide the needle out through your hands. So that sounds kind of confusing, but it's actually one of the easiest ways that you can do a knot. This is also sometimes called a quilter's knot. Now, I have yellow fabric, and that's and I got yellow thread to go along with it, but I'm actually going to use black thread because I think it's going to be easier for you to see when I'm stitching up against my yellow fabric. A lot of times when I stitch on the sewing machine with my projects, I either use red or I use hot pink, just because it's hard to see a fabric that blends. So I'm going to take my thread and I am going to hold the end of the thread in my fingers. I'm going to stretch my arm out and I'm going to pull the thread all the way up to my shoulder. And then I am going to take some scissors and cut it. This pillow, you don't know that I've actually got a pillow underneath here, and it's serving two purposes. One, it gets a little bit closer to the camera and I can keep it in frame. And the other thing is I'm actually going to use it as part of my stitching later on. And if it's okay with your parents, they might let you do this too. Alrighty. I have my needle in my non-dominant hand. Let me move this out of the way. And my non-dominant hand. And I'm going to hold my thread really, really close to the end. It should be like 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, no more than that sticking out. Here's the thing. If you try to thread your needle with a big long piece like this, it's too flappy. And it's almost like trying to cook spaghetti in the eyelets of your shoes. It's just not going to work. So hold it real close to the end. Make sure that you have the eye of the needle facing towards you, not sideways, and then push it through. You're only doing 1 thread, and as it goes through, you grab it on the other side. All right, I'm going to do that again. Hold it really close to the edge, to the end of it, and line your thread up close to the eye of the needle, push through, and then just keep going. Now, you do not want to tie the 2 ends together. You don't. You want to have one loose and one of them that we're going to put our knot on. Okay? Maybe I'll put this here and you can see a little bit better what I'm doing, because it kind of blends in with the background of the pillow. All right, so I'm going to I have my needle in my dominant hand. I'm going to put the thread, the end of the thread, underneath my thumb, right next to the needle. I'm going to take my non-dominant hand and wrap it around. I'm not even counting, probably 5 or 6 times. I've now got that wound up thread underneath my thumb. I'm going to grab with my non-dominant hand the end of my needle, and I'm going to pull, 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 until I get that wound up thread all the way to the end. And looky there, I've got a knot. I'm going to do that again. So my needle is in my dominant hand. I'm going to put the thread under my thumb near the end of the needle that has the eye. I'm going to take the thread in my non-dominant hand. I'm going to wrap it around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you only do it 3 times, it's going to make a little tiny knot. Part of the problem with that is that it might pull through when you put it through your fabric. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the needle with my non-dominant hand, and I'm still holding real tight where that looped thread is, and I'm sliding all the way down to the end, and there's my knot. I've got this nice little knot. Now, I don't want this big long tail, so I'm going to clip just a little bit of it off, but I want to have 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch on the end of it so that it doesn't just pop out real easily. I'm going to move this out of the way, and I found this piece of fabric. I actually made a baby quilt out of this for one of my friends who's going to have a baby, and I pinned it together, and I also drew a line on it. Let me see if I can get you just a little bit closer. All right. I'm going to start on this end. Now, when we do embroidery or counted cross stitch or anything like that, you always want to make sure that your knots are on the inside or they're hidden in between the layers. But this is the wrong side of the fabric, and we're not going to see it, and we don't want any knots on the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of fabric. So I'm going to go in and out. I'm going to go in, up and down. Let's see if you can see my hand do this. It's kind of like a dolphin swims. Back just a little bit. So up and down, like a dolphin swims. One of the things that's going to be really, really important is that we not make these too big. If they are too big, your mask is going to fall apart, and that's not going to be good. All right, so I have gone in and out of the fabric with the needle, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull until the knot just sits right on top of the fabric. Okay? And when I pull up on my thread, I'm going to wrap my fingers gently around the thread, the end of that thread that's loose, so that when I pull my hand up, my loose thread is not going to just keep working its way up towards the eye of the needle. If I do that, then I'm going to have to stop and rethread my needle, and that's no fun. So you may not be able to guess how big that is right there, but that's about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to then go over about the same distance again and go in and out, tiny stitch, and pull it flat. I don't want to pull too hard because I don't want this all bunching up. I'm just going to let it sit right on top. So in and out just a little bit. Now, one of the things that you can do with this pillow is it can help you, and you only do this if your parents say it's okay because you don't want to damage a pillow. This one's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt anything. So let me see if I can get this where I want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to take a pin, and I'm going to pin right into that pillow. And the reason why I'm doing that is that's going to give me a little tension, which is going to make it easier for me to do the stitches. I'm going to go in and out. There's a pin right here. I can take that one out. I don't need it anymore. Put it back in your pin cushion if you have one, or if you have a little box, put it in your box. So in and out, and pull it flat. 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 Now, I want you to stitch at least 3 inches of this before you stop. 3 inches is not very much practice at all, but at least it's a little bit of practice. I'm going to do a couple more, and then I'm going to show you how to do an ending knot. So in and out, pull it flat, in and out, and pull it flat. I'm going to move my pin back a little bit farther so you can see where I am. You notice this pillow's got a real big weave to it. Don't do this with anything that's like silk, or if a pin mark's going to show on it. I mean, you could probably even use your bed pillow if you wanted to. Okay, I'm going to do one more stitch, and then I'm going to show you how to do the knot. All right, I've got that stitch there. I'm going to take a little bitty tiny stitch right at the end. So in and out, really, really tiny. And I have my thumb on the thread right where it's coming out of the fabric so that it doesn't get all twisted up. And when my circle gets really small, I'm going to go through it once, and then I'm going to go through it again, and then I'm going to very carefully slide all of that right down next to the fabric. Okay, if the knot ends up too far away from the fabric, then your stitches will be loose. So I slid it so it was right down there. I also checked to make sure that this wasn't all puckered up before I did that stitch. I'm then going to take my scissors and I'm going to clip my thread. And I want to leave maybe about 1/4 of an inch tail on there. It doesn't have to be real long. If you have one that's real long, you're going to end up it's going to knot up on you, or you could get caught on something. That's called a running stitch. It's a running stitch. A running stitch isn't super strong, but there's a way that we can make it a little bit stronger. And that is to take my same thread, because I still have plenty. I'm going to make that knot again. Thumb and finger by the eye of the needle, wrap it, whoop. I actually like to have it on the finger side because I wrap away from me. And then I'm going to slide this all the way down to the bottom. Okay, I don't want a real long tail, so I'm going to clip a little bit of it off. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start about in the same spot that I started the first time, right on that line. And what I'm going to do this time is, in every space, I'm going to make a stitch. So where this stitch starts, I'm going to go in there and out the other side where the stitch ends. And what we're basically doing is we're going to fill in the spaces in between. I'm also trying really hard to stay on the line. I don't want to be too wiggly on the line, otherwise I will, my mask is going to be sewn crooked. So look what just happened. My thread, the loop of my thread got caught around there. Don't pull hard because you'll end up breaking your thread. What you have to do is just grab that loop and loosen it up with your fingers. Oh, interesting. It caught on something it shouldn't have caught on, so I am going to undo that stitch. And the way to undo a stitch is to unthread your needle, put your needle under the loop to get it started, and then just gently pull the thread back out. Okay, and if you might have to do it more than once depending on how many stitches you have that are not done correctly. So I don't have to re-knot it. I am going to rethread my needle though. I have seen some tutorials on people doing stitches and they just do it so perfectly. They must have to like do it again and again and again and edit like crazy. But you know what? That's not reality. Reality is sometimes you have to stop and redo things. Okay, so I'm at the beginning of the stitch that on the previous line. I'm going to go down and I'm going to bend my fabric so that I can come out on the other side of that stitch and pull it flat. Part of the problem is I got these loose threads from the side that are being uncooperative. So down, bend your fabric, and pull it close. Down and up. So every time I make a stitch, I am on the other side. See how I have almost a continuous line of stitches on this side now? And that's because I am making one in between every stitch that I did before. I'm going to finish this line and then I'm going to tie a knot again, and then I'm going to show you the other stitch. So this is a running stitch. It's just done 2 times. And the reason why we want to do it 2 times is that a running stitch by itself is not very strong. If your thread breaks and you pull on that thread, the whole thing's going to fall apart. Okay? A running stitch is usually just used for hand basting or something that doesn't need a lot of strength. But it is one that we can use here if we stitch twice. Now, if your stitches aren't perfectly in between each one, but you go ahead and stitch another set of running stitches right on top of that previous line, you're okay. That'll do fine. All right, one more stitch, and then I am going to make my knot. So little tiny stitch. Remember, I'm going to control that loop. I don't want it to get all twisted. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go 1, 2 times through the loop, and then I'm going to very carefully pull it down as close to the fabric as I can get, and then I am going to cut the thread. Okay, don't cut too close, because if you cut too close it might come undone, but if you have a little bit of a tail you're good to go. Okay, I am going to draw a line on the other side, and then I'm going to show you how to do the other stitch. I'll be right back.